Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. Today we're tackling one of history's biggest figures, Alexander the Great.
Huge, yeah.
We're going beyond the typical conqueror image,
Right.
using biographies, historical analyses, and even some cool archaeological stuff to understand him as a person.
It's a story that's lasted millennia.
Exactly. His ambition, his flaws, even how he's shown up everywhere, from old coins to modern movies.
It's intriguing how Alexander's story is almost part myth. Like, even from birth, there were these wild tales, almost like he was meant for greatness.
More than just a few coincidences, right?
Yeah.
His birth happened at the same time. His father, Philip II, won a big battle. And there's that story about the Temple of Artemis burning down.
Oh, yeah?
Because the goddess was busy at his birth. Think those stories, true or not, shaped his image.
Totally. True or embellished. They built this aura of destiny around him. And it wasn't random. His mother, Olympias, really pushed that.
Olympias, a woman of ambition if there ever was one, believed her son was special, destined for big things. Makes you wonder, though, did Alexander feel that as destiny or a burden?
Hard to say for sure, but the sources show a young man driven to achieve. And we can't forget his education, especially with Aristotle.
Speaking of shaping minds, Aristotle wasn't your typical teacher. What impact did he have beyond just battle tactics?
Oh, profound. Aristotle instilled in Alexander a love of philosophy, morals, the arts. It molded his worldview, some say even his leadership. Think about it. A military leader who carried a marked-up Iliad on campaigns.
Wow, he saw himself in those epics like he was the hero in the making.
Exact.
Can't forget the story of Bucephalus either, the wild horse he tamed at, 10 years old? Sounds almost too good to be true.
It's super telling, though. Even that young, he was courageous, determined, but also understood psychology, like seeing past the horse's fear to its potential. Those are leadership qualities right there.
So we have ambition from mom, a legendary teacher, and taming a wild beast. It does seem like everything pointed to an extraordinary life.
And extraordinary it was. When Philip II, Alexander's dad, was assassinated, boom, Alexander's on the throne at 20 years old.
Big shoes to fill. How did that sudden change affect his early reign?
He had to prove himself.
Yeah.
Fast. And he did, consolidating power, eliminating rivals, ruthlessly. Often, he wasn't afraid to use force.
It's like destroying Thebes. That sent a message. What was he thinking with such a brutal act?
It was calculated. A show of force, pure and simple. Rebellion. Not on his watch. It set the tone. But he wasn't just about force. He secured Greece, the Balkans, his own backyard, before going after enemies.
That's often forgotten. Secure your base first. Seems obvious, but it shows his strategy.
Exactly. And he knew how important navies were against the Persian Empire, so he conquered their coastline. No supplies, no reinforcements.
Genius. Cripple their lifeline before going for the heart.
It shows Alexander's strategic brilliance. He planned. He understood the bigger picture. This was clear at the Granicus River, his first major fight with the Persians.
Ah, the Granicus. Outnumbered, but still a decisive victory. What happened there?
It was a showcase of his tactics, using the terrain to his advantage. He flanked the Persians, and we saw the Macedonian phalanx in action.
Right, the phalanx. Basically a wall of shields and spears.
Yeah, imagine facing that coming at you.
Yeah.
No wonder the Persians were routed. But Granicus was just the start.
His campaign was just getting going, and it would all lead up to one of history's most famous battles, the Battle of Issus.
At Issus, he went head-to-head with Darius III, the Persian king. Empires were on the line.
Empires on the line. It's mind-blowing. So what won it for Alexander?
Issus. It was tactical genius again. He positioned his troops perfectly, anticipating Darius's moves. Then bam! A devastating attack that shattered their lines. A total victory. It shook the ancient world.
More than just the army, though, right? He captured Darius's family. His wife, his mother.
Huge blow. Strategically and psychologically, Alexander was looking invincible. But that wasn't enough for him. He didn't want just Persia. He wanted more.
To push the boundaries. And so he heads east to Egypt. But there, they welcome him. How did he, a Macedonian king, handle the Egyptians?
It's interesting. We think of him as a conqueror, but in Egypt he was a liberator. They'd been under Persia for ages and saw Alexander as a chance to be free again, to reclaim their culture.
And Alexander, smart as he was, used that, declared himself pharaoh, consulted the oracle at Siwa. It was a mix of military power and cultural awareness.
Total hearts and minds campaign. He respected their customs, their beliefs, even as he took charge. And this is where one of his biggest legacies is born, Alexandria.
The city, Named for him, of course, but it became a center of knowledge culture for centuries. It shows he didn't just want to conquer.
Right, he built things too.
He had a vision.
Absolutely. And don't forget, he was a patron of the arts and sciences. His reign saw this explosion of intellectual and cultural exchange. But the journey's not done. From Egypt, he heads to the heart of Persia.
And this is where we get to Persepolis, the legendary city. And a very controversial moment, the burning of Persepolis.
Yeah. Shrouded in mystery, was it just drink and partying gone wrong? Or deliberate revenge for what the Persians did to the Acropolis in Athens?
It seems so impulsive compared to Egypt. To just destroy such a magnificent city makes you wonder about him, his motives.
It does. And some sources say even Alexander regretted it. It's like he had these moments of destructive recklessness alongside his great vision. A complex guy.
Very complex. So Persepolis is in ashes, but Alexander keeps going east. Central Asia, fierce resistance, brutal conditions. He was obsessed with reaching the edge of the world. What drove him? Was it just ambition?
That's the question, right? Was it knowledge, proving himself, destiny, maybe? Whatever it was, he pushed his army to the limit.
Yeah.
Mountains, deserts, founding cities as he went. Alexandria Chete, Alexandria on the Oxus, Alexandria and Arachosia, all these Alexandrias marking his path.
All those cities over such a vast area. It's hard to grasp how ambitious he was. And it leads him to India, to the Battle of the Hydaspes River against King Porus.
Oh, the Hydaspes.
Yeah.
One of his toughest wins. Porus was no joke. His army even had war elephants. Alexander's troops had never seen anything like it.
War elephants. Can you imagine the chaos on that battlefield?
Terrifying. Magnificent.
Yeah.
All at once. But Alexander adapted, outmaneuvered Porus, pulled off the victory.
But then, amidst this brutality, we see something else. He's impressed by Porus's courage. Doesn't kill him, doesn't imprison him, makes him an ally, lets him keep ruling.
She's his leadership, you know. True power wasn't just about force. He built alliances, created loyalty. A defeated enemy could be useful.
Politically savvy, for sure. He knew how to play the game. But even the best strategist can't always control his men. At the Hyphasis River, Alexander's army says, nope, we're done.
They were at their breaking point. Years of campaigning, so far from home, rumors of even bigger empires further east. Too much. They were exhausted, homesick.
He must have been crushed. To come so close, only to be forced back. How did he take it?
You know, it shows his leadership that he didn't make them keep going. He realized they'd reached their limit. Heavy heart, but he turned them around. And the journey home, that was brutal too. Maybe even more so than going east.
That trek through the Gadrosian Desert, awful. So many men died. It reminds you of the cost of these campaigns, the suffering on both sides.
It's the dark side of the glory and triumph, right? And when he finally gets back to Persia, more trouble.
Corruption amongst his satraps, the guys he left in charge.
Betrayal. And Alexander, no surprise, he didn't tolerate that, dealt with them swiftly, ruthlessly, decisive, unforgiving. He knew how to hold on to power.
But then on top of all that, a personal tragedy. Hephaestion dies, his closest friend.
Devastating. They'd been close since childhood, and some say it was more than just friendship.
An aspect of his story that's often ignored. His grief was immense. The funeral he gave Hephaestion was lavish. It shows a different side of him, a vulnerable side beneath the conqueror image.
He was human, after all, capable of deep emotion, deep loss. And so, with all this going on, grief, political turmoil, Alexander's own life is nearing its end.
It's almost like his own success, his drive, contributed to his downfall in the end. So much happening on top of that personal loss. What were these final years like for him?
There was a growing sense of isolation, maybe even disillusionment. Think about it. Carrying the weight of an empire, being seen as almost a god by some, but still dealing with very human emotions. Grief, loss. It's fascinating to think about.
And then the big mystery, he dies in Babylon at only 32. So many theories. What are the main contenders?
Poisoning is always popular, right? Especially with all the political stuff swirling around him. Some blame Antipater, one of his top generals. Some even say Aristotle might have been involved. A real historical mystery.
It's wild to think someone so powerful could be taken out by poison. But I guess that's power for you, always unstable, even for Alexander. Were there other ideas besides poison?
Oh, yeah. Some say disease got him. Malaria, maybe typhoid. Both common back then. Others think it was a bunch of things together. Years of hard living, campaigns wearing him down, plus Hephaestion's death. It all weakens you, makes you vulnerable.
It's almost tragic, the ambition, the drive that made him great. Maybe those also destroyed him.
It is. And maybe that's why his story still grabs us. Triumph and tragedy, ambition and loss. Human nature, but on a massive scale. But even in debt, his impact didn't stop.
Right. We've talked about the man, but what about the legacy? How did Alexander's conquests, his whole reign, change things?
His empire didn't last long, but the effects were huge. His conquests kicked off the Hellenistic period, Greek and Eastern cultures blending together. It influenced everything, art, architecture, even philosophy and science. And cities he founded, like Alexandria, they became centers of learning and trade. Greek culture spread all over the Mediterranean and even beyond.
So more than a conqueror, he was this cultural bridge between East and West. His vision went way past his own life.
Absolutely. And his military genius.
Mhm.
Leaders and strategists have been studying him for centuries. Even today, they still look at his campaigns. Proof that he shaped warfare itself. But maybe his biggest legacy. It's the story.
The story of Alexander, it's captivated people for, what, over 2,000 years? We've seen his ambition, his brilliance, his flaws, his humanity. What do you think is the biggest takeaway from his life?
I think it reminds us, even the biggest figures in history, they were human. They did amazing things, but they made mistakes too. We got to look past the myths and legends to see the real complexity. It's a story that keeps fascinating us because, in a way, it's like our story. We all have aspirations, struggles. We're all searching for meaning in this crazy world.
What a journey this has been. From his rise to power, to his death, to the triumphs and the heartbreaks, we've really explored Alexander the Great, the conqueror, the visionary, the flawed human being. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want you to keep exploring. Look deeper into the sources, come to your own conclusions. Think about what this story means today. What does Alexander mean to you? What can we learn from his life? The answers, like so much in history, they're complicated, but that's what makes it so interesting. It's a story that makes us question, makes us think, makes us keep talking about the past and how it shapes us now.
Exactly. And maybe that's the real legacy in the end. To make us curious, to spark debate, to keep asking questions about ourselves and the world around us.